look back in history and see where they'd gone to with some of the limestone tech, if you will, on the pyramids and other kind of older edifices, and see what they tried to do with the limestone tech at the time. I really believe there was a power system around our planet earlier that was wireless power, very much like Tesla talked about, but a global network of a society that was interconnected, and something went awry at that point. So were they trying to also bring it up to such a high gigahertz frequency at that point? I'm not sure. I wasn't alive 10, 12,000 years ago. Go.
2020, ladies and gentlemen, we have David DuByne with us. Now, David has been following the markets as well as the trends connected to solar cycles for years. Now, we were discussing some things off the air that has us both definitely worked up pretty good, but we're going to work through this together, folks, because our minds are more powerful than anything. So we need to know about what's going on. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is not bliss. And I'll tell you, with the global changes as fast as they're happening and the cyclical events connected to things that we have seen with our own eyes 10 years ago, like 10, 12 years ago, what is it going to be like for 2020? Well, who better to bring on the show than Mr. David DuByne? David, I know you're super busy. It's very late where you're at. How you doing?
Doing great. I live in a 24-hour world. I will come on anytime, day or night, to talk and try to explain to people what we are going into with this grand solar minimum and how everything's being masked to try to prevent panic across this planet. Because the last thing that the powers that be want is a bunch of people running to buy the same exact supplies that they're going to need in terms of food. And I was just told that this is the last year of stable food supply that we have on the planet. And from this point forward, there'll be less and less supply. And there's even an idea going around right now to sell food by the calorie. And this is promoted by DARPA and the United Nations both. And I'll give you here I think I gave you the link for the website there up at shepherdsheart.life. And it's called Food Supply Reality. And this is by Celeste. And she goes into great detail of what's detailed in the new United Nations report, along with DARPA, on how they're planning, when the food shortages begin after this year, to sell you food by the calorie. So can you imagine what the food price increases will be if we're going to sell food by the calorie? And guess where they're going to put the test plot out? California and Oregon, to see if we can get people to accept it there.
Those are probably the two best beta states to pick, because anyway, yeah. Maybe not everybody, but a lot of people, oh yeah, that's a great idea. We can save the planet this way, and we get rid of our straws. Now, here's the thing. Straws are bad, right? I get it. Plastic straws are not good for the marine environment. Definitely not good. However,
I'm not a fan of plastic at all, really. You should see all the plastic out in the ocean. It's like 1 part out of 6 in the water now is plastic. I'm very much against the real pollution. Like particulates coming out that are belching and leaving, whatever it is coming out of all these industrializing nations that are allowed to pollute unchecked. But in America here, we can't even have a straw. They want to cut down natural gas. You can't even heat your home. But halfway across the planet, they're like, oh, just burn plastic, burn whatever, and just make anything you want. It's cool. Just send it back our way on a ship, and we'll turn a blind eye, and it's all good. That's not good. If CO2 is really such a bad, all-encompassing extinction level event, why is half the planet allowed to go unchecked, but we have to kowtow to not having drinking straws? Oh my gosh.
And the thing is, the younger generations are seeing these drinking straws as the world's problems. They're not looking at the bigger picture. They're throwing them these little breadcrumbs, and they're kind of going after that. And then they're getting mad at somebody else that's using a straw when they go to the restaurant because they're in Rome and they're acting like a Roman. It's just amazing how the MFers, those that love us so much, do a wonderful job compartmentalizing the masses and getting them to kind of fight amongst each other. Meanwhile, they're controlling the scenes, they're controlling the governments, they're controlling the bills and the laws and the regulations and the lobbyists and pretty much everything in between. And then they feed people the lies. So that as fast as I could, David. You like cryptos, right? You follow the crypto market.
I know, Bob. personally as well. I mean, we talked for years about crypto, and he's trying to take the crypto edge of it, which I am too, about smart contracts for food deliveries in the future, and trying to work out where the crypto is going to move in the space and how we're going to use it as we transition, because so many fiat currencies are going to collapse during this time. And you're deluding yourself if you think that crypto is not the new replacement system for what is considered now these green pieces of paper, or blue or red or whatever color it is in a country near you that you're using. But this transition, do you think Facebook just started this right now, and that all the negative publicity and all the headlines? But think about it. How many people know about crypto now that didn't know about it, 6 months ago, just because Facebook said they were going to unveil it? I think Facebook's part of the whole plan to get people accustomed to hearing it, understanding it, delving into it, wanting to know more about it, because you got to think the hundreds of millions of new people that are like, oh, what's that thing? Oh, it's good for, I mean, I can get 0 fees and do something on a Libra coin on Facebook. Of course I want to do that, but I don't want to use banks. I want to get free 0% and, instant transfers between my friend, and it's in Facebook. I already have a Facebook account. Wow, what's this crypto stuff? Never heard of it before. You think the timing now we're coming into the food shortages, that it's just random happenstance that the coins are coming out in a more, general populace awakening and understanding? Not a chance that it's random. And again, if you want to trade on that, should you not have the upper hand? Should you not be able to enrich yourself during this time if you have the type of information that can help you? Because we're going to all need money during this time. We're all going to need more money. The food price, they're talking about selling food by the calorie. Are you kidding me? How expensive is your food going to get? And look how little people have in savings. What is the average American has $400 in the bank or less? What can you buy with $400? Really? And you think that entire society is going to transition into grow your own food and, store your own food and pack your own food and keep everything? Oh, we're going to kumbaya into the next. No. It's going to go down hard. 1,000 miles into a brick wall with no airbag. And the transition of the economy is coming. It's smart contracts for grain deliveries, and going to be using crypto to intertrade between you, me, and everybody else. They're soft unveiling it right now to get you aware.
Well, I definitely appreciate your opinion, David. And it's really interesting to hear the different mindsets of people. Having a channel like this, I see tens of thousands of comments. I get hundreds of emails a day, and getting the different mindsets of people, what they feel is on the horizon. And sometimes when we bring up these podcasts, their thoughts about what we just talk about. Some people look at this as, oh man, is this a fear-based mindset? Absolutely not. It's better to be prepared than scared. I don't fear what's coming by any means. I think it's exciting, it's fascinating, it's invigorating. I do have the, let me repeat that though. Let me add to that. A little bit of fear can be a good thing. A little bit. Now, if it overcomes you, then you're in that fight or flight mode and you're easier to control. But if you've got a little bit inside of you where you've got that concern, it can motivate you enough to actually get off your butt and do something. And I think that could be a good thing. So you and I talked about this off the air. And I'm just going to bring this up. My warning, I was warned about this one world government system that was going to have people chipped and tracked, and actually the details that I was given 27 years ago from a friend of mine that's mom used to work for the FBI, and then she got put on some list, he said. But according to the information he was giving me about the tracking devices, et cetera, to a level of if you're leaving your district, they changed the names of cities and states, their districts, then they'll have these different monetary systems connected to the district that you're in. And if you go from one zone, you go from one zone to the next, that you've got to change your currencies and exchange them, and you have to be allowed to go to the next zone. Got pretty nerve-wracking. And then I was warned about it by several other people in different circumstances over a course of 10 years after that. So, and then off and on since then. So really, since I was 15, I've been warned about that. You've seen things with your own eyes overseas that we don't need to get into, but that could also could back up that fear of that possibility. Certainly, I enjoy the right to speak for myself for the most part. I mean, we're even getting to the point now where we have to watch our words in the land of the free. But we're at a point now where we can either do something about it or just let it happen. And David's doing something about it. He's walking the walk, talking the talk, and doing a ton of research. And there's stuff on your website even showing that there are record-breaking freezing spans going on, not just record-breaking heat indexes, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And, when you take a look at what the mainstream media wants to focus on, what's happening in Australia at the moment, coldest ever, how many thousands of cold records are being broken right now? Tasmania, New Zealand as well. Oh, don't talk about it. South America. Oh, look over to somewhere where it's hot. Don't look over here. How about Montana being 30 degrees under the normal for the entire summer? Too inconvenient. Let's focus on a plastic straw. Like Rex, what do you said you get a lot of comments here of the future. So what are these people that you're, reading the comments? I get a lot of comments too. We always get like 1,000 a day or something. That's generally my average between email, social media feed, and then the comments through all the videos I do. Probably get 1,000 comments a day. And I really try to read every single one. I may not be able to comment to everyone, but I really try, truly, everybody out there, you write, I read. I might not be able to comment to everybody, but it's in here so I can try to get ideas for the next videos. And with just an enormous amount of things just pouring in every day, I really try to review it all. And I have somebody help me. And if they find something super interesting, they'll toss it my way. But what are you seeing in your crowd over there that's commenting on your videos? What are they talking about for the future? Because you mentioned that right in the beginning there. So, you tell me about your vision of the future, and then I'll compare my notes with mine after you show me yours, I'll show you mine. So go first.
Hello. So the majority of people, feel, well, at least in the comment section, what I've read, and I read almost every single comment too. I'm kind of like you. I get so many emails and comments a day. I can't respond to all of them. I just don't have the time. If I did, I wouldn't be able to do nearly as many podcasts. I'd have to focus on just responding. And then it would be kind of a downward spiral. It wouldn't be as much information out there. So anyway, to make a long story short, I get everything. But the majority of people feel that global warming is a hoax, or the information about global warming was false and misrepresented. We do occasionally get people that leave comments that they think global warming is real. Like matter of fact, there was a guy at the very beginning of this podcast that said, so what are you telling, and before we even started, David, that said, so what are you saying? All these well-educated people are retards? And I never said anything about well-educated people being retards. I did a podcast with the title 2020, Record Freezing Temps and Heat Waves, Food Shortages, Gov's Not Ready, David DuByne. And so in his mind, he took that title and added his fluff words and then projected his thoughts to me and the world. I didn't even say that. So most people feel that the world's going to continue. A lot of people have this fear factor. They think we're going into a serious ice age now, but those are people oftentimes that are very well connected with the electric universe hypothesis and the grand solar minimum, I've noticed, more so than some of the other genres and fields that people study. But most people think that we are going into some extreme weather, but not global warming.
Yeah, and it's all about following the cycles of history. And, people talk about longer cycles that we're heading into. If truly what the electric universe people are talking about manifests through, and we go into this magnetic pole reversal, and the sun's solar wind stops, where we get this plasma inflow, and it's an inflection point where the electrical inflow is enough to stop the actual solar wind, that our sun's not powered enough externally to generate that solar wind. At that point, then our magnetosphere is going to puff out like a giant balloon, and any cosmic rays are going to rain down upon us, as well as space debris. We're going through a more dense region of space. So instead of just thinking about sulfur dioxide and some of these stratospheric eruptions that are going up 35, 40, 50, 60,000 feet into the atmosphere, on top of that going up, we're going to get an enormous amount of debris coming down as well. So it's just interesting and quirky that now spaceweather.com is coming out talking about why are the sunsets so purple, and space.com is picking it up. And you start to see this whole genre sweep around the planet explaining why the sunsets are so purple right now. And they're putting it up to volcanic eruptions. Well, for me, that's a little scary that we've had 5 stratospheric ejections in the last 6 months. And when you go back to 1800s, when back to the Dalton minimum, year without a summer, those volcanic aerosols are directly responsible for reflection, cooling Earth's temperatures, reduce agricultural yield. And it doesn't take too long before you start looking back in history and you start adding these cycles together to go, whoa, we're going to get a little problem here with our agricultural yields globally, like we can't bring everything indoor to start growing in parking garages and disused shopping malls. There's simply, what's that, like 1/5 of 1/8 of a percent that we could feed globally. Even if we used every defunct shopping mall, warehouse, and shopping garage in the United States, I think it would be able to feed 1/10 of 1% of the people in America. So if we're going to lose our outdoor agriculture, it's going to be dependent upon you as an individual to bring things indoors, to start your own agriculture in your own house. And then we can have the, grow centers that we can start to add in on top. Now, animals and animal husbandry, that's an entirely different thing to think about. We could bring that up into the industrial scale. But, our lives are going to morph greatly during this time. And I really hope that you can enjoy the changes, get ready for them. Like you're reveling in the changes. Me too. I see it. I'm kind of excited for the changes. A lot of people are unwilling to change. They're not ready for the changes. And, the monetary change, your lifestyle change, we're going to have to go back to pioneering lifestyle, really something further back in time, the way we're going to live and trade. People aren't ready for that. They'd rather just check out because they can't get their whatever instant conveniences or whatnot. But I really enjoy kind of stepping back a little bit, going back to where we might connect with people again, using your hands to kind of grow your own food, touch nature again, and just live a more hearty existence. But the whole DARPA UN side over here wanting to charge you by the calorie for your food and control you and put you in little habitation zones. I don't know. It's going to be some kind of, diametric opposite thinking that's going to collide in the middle there somewhere, I think. But again, that's just my own opinion.
So the agenda of 21 that I'm sure just about everybody in here has heard of, or even seen some of the maps that were put together based upon the papers and such. They bring people into these zones, essentially, where you've got living zones and then you've got the wildlife zones. And in my opinion, it seems as if certain people that sign bills into law are I don't understand how you could sign a bill into law in California by 2035 saying that any energy producing technology is not able to it's not able to emit carbon as a byproduct. So no carbon emissions by 2035. And I don't even think it uses the term technology, just anything that produces energy will not be able to emit carbon emissions in California by 2035. Well, don't we emit carbon?
Every breath. I don't know. You're 40,000 parts per million when you exhale. So I don't know how they're going to contain that. But one thing I might add in, the Agenda 2030 protocols that you're looking at right now, we're taking it from the perspective of the population of 8 billion people to try to implement this and squeeze everybody in these habitation zones. I don't see that at all. I see with the Grand Solar Minimum, we're going to wipe out an enormous amount of population. So whoever's left at that point, maybe we could all live off wind and solar at that point, because the demand will be so minimal, and the industrial might and capability, it'll be more like living in the 1300s again, and you'll be a serf and you'll have some guy on a castle up there trying to oversee you and tell you how much power you can have, and people will be living with the pigs, sleeping in the sties over there. They want you to go back that way, but the way to implement that is reduce population. That's the only possible thing. So zero emissions in zones. You tell me where we're going with that.
Well, it also, a lot of people are seeing the replacement of us. There are these major pushes for autonomous systems doing the work for us. The robotic systems are they're every single time I look up a new technology on some of these robotics, it's just fascinating. The entertainment systems pushing the robotics as our replacement, the 5G. And, did you read the article, David, about how Verizon is rolling out 5G ultra band in 13 stadiums, and they can't even fill up these entire stadiums yet? They're like, well, it's going to be allowed in some areas of these stadiums. And then you look up the frequency range of the ultra high band running up to 29 gigahertz. That's just the microwave's 2.5 gigahertz. And then there's the those that are promoting 5G, or those that think that, you if you're concerned about 5G, that you're out of your mind, they're like, well, it's the millimeter wave, so it's not even going to penetrate. It's going to barely penetrate the skin. You'll be fine. And it's just a little bit. The wattage is just a little bit. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm just looking in the microwave for an hour. But then they go on to say that the microwave waves, because they're at 2.5 gigahertz, and this is true, microwave waves at 2.5 gigahertz, the waves are longer. So they can go further into the body. They penetrate more. Whereas these higher frequency bands at 29 gigahertz, they're going versus whoa, 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 times a million. Your thoughts?
Doesn't matter if you're going to penetrate my skin at even 1/1 millionth of a millimeter by your frequency wavelength, you're invading my body. Not acceptable. And there's going to be repercussions for the physiological effects on a human. Even if you're going down to 1/1 millionth of a millimeter in there on a wavelength, that's electrically affecting the rest of the system in your body. Are you kidding me? There's no effect on that. I don't care. It's zero or it's nothing. Please don't insult me. And you're insulting millions of people, hundreds of millions of people, to try to put this frequency out there. And then what are you going to use it for? Crowd control as well? I anticipate this being used, 5G, as a frequency control weapon for people when they get into the food riots. You see what we can do on the Humvees already with the military. Spin that little dish around and you aim it at a crowd and their skin burns, or they sit down and they vomit, they fall to their knees, they get nausea, whatever. That's a frequency wave too. And that could be carried right inside that whole, it goes up to 39 gigahertz. Are you telling me that they can't insert a frequency wave in there to do something with crowd control from 0 to 39 gigahertz, and they can't put anything in there to control people? Oh, wow. You just sold me on it. You want to help humanity. Thanks so much for the faster internet. I feel safer tonight sleeping.
Yeah. And really, I mean, first of all, I don't watch football, but I respect people that do. I just don't have the time span for it. I'm like, wow, that was great. Okay, now let's go do something else productive. But hey, they're making millions of dollars and people are watching it and they're selling ads. So right on, man. It's entertainment for the masses, and entertainment can be a good thing. But when you watch these games and then you find out that people are going to these games and they're going to unleash this new 5G system in arenas, I'm thinking to myself, why are you releasing 5G at an NFL stadium where people are going to watch a football game? First of all, it's good publicity. Don't get me wrong. It's a great way. Oh yeah, we're watching the game on our phone and we can watch it faster on our phone than right here. It's happening here before it happens here. Whatever. But what a great way, like you said. Let's see if we can just manipulate the atmosphere a little bit. Let's see if we can make them a little bit more aggressive. And then, like you said, food shortages. Yeah. What happened with New Orleans? Where did all the people go that weren't prepared? A lot of them went to that stadium. That was a nightmare in the stadium. It was a nightmare in the stadium. Well, gee, you got 5G set up there already at 29 gigahertz. Did you know the 5G spectrum, David, they're saying can go all the way up to 300 gigahertz? The spectrum itself, 5G, the 5G backbone can go up to 300 gigahertz.
Can you imagine what you can do neurologically at 300 and anywhere in between there? Like, we've never even gone that far to experiment on the human brain before. Can you imagine what you could do with that?
It's wild. It's wild to think.
Can I even step further? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, what kind of entity could you allow to interface inside a human neurological network if you had that kind of frequency range? Like, we're operating at a certain range. If you're going to piggyback on another range, could you allow a different entity that's at a different dimensional realm to kind of blend in ranges at that point? That's kind of where I would think if you're going that high, they're trying to bring in an extra dimensional entity to override it, or at least provide the conduit for whatever it is, an energetic other body on a different dimensional realm to jump into a third dimensional space. And maybe that space is your brain, perhaps. Maybe the 5G network is to allow something else larger to inhabit that zone where it can physically manifest. I talked about this before a few times, because what they're taking this range to is there's no need for it at all. Like, why would you even consider going that high on the range except to bring in something extra dimensional? That's the only possible causation for that. The only reason in my mind is to bring an extra dimensional entity into this realm only. Again, it's my only opinion. It's my opinion. You can agree, disagree, but look back in history and see where they'd gone to with some of the limestone tech, if you will, on the pyramids and other kind of older edifices, and see what they tried to do with the limestone tech at the time. I really believe there was a power system around our planet earlier that was wireless power, very much like Tesla talked about, but a global network of a society that was interconnected, and something went awry at that point. So were they trying to also bring it up to such a high gigahertz frequency at that point? I'm not sure. I wasn't alive 10, 12,000 years ago. But there was something much more advanced than we are now prior to us. Perhaps we've rediscovered the tech and we're trying to bring it back in again. And maybe that's where they went awry and where we're going to go awry again. I'm just not sure.
I don't know if you happen to see the podcast that I did yesterday and the one the day before that, but it is resonating exactly with what you just said about our ancestors having the technology and us attempting, now scientists attempting to duplicate it, and inventors and innovators. So what's interesting is if you look at a quantum computer, if you look at the D-Wave quantum computer and you look at the JED tower, and if you look at the more detailed JED towers, DJED, they look very similar. And many of our ancestors and also the gods and the pharaohs and the goddesses would wear these JED headsets connected to these other intricate designs and somatics and sound waves. And, people still want us to believe, modern scholars want us to believe that there was thousands of slaves going, oh, get that 50,000 ton stone. Come on, Paul. Oh.
Not a chance. And notice they all had the gold intricacy as well, but we use gold wiring today in our computers. Are you kidding me? They had wire thin gold that people are wearing with jade headsets to try to emanate energy, and then somehow it's just, it was just jewelry. Really? And they have cones that can move and vibrate. And, the whole thing, I was looking at Tartaria, which is like an older global civilization. And, from a scientific standpoint, I'm looking at global liquefaction from the Dalton minimum, where there seemed to be some global liquefaction event where an enormous amount of mud poured out and buildings sunk, anywhere from 6 to 10, 12, 20 feet globally. You see this in every country. I don't care where you go. You can find this global liquefaction event. Some people call it a mud flood, but that's kind of like, like a chemtrail. I just don't believe that that's the word that should be used to describe the scientific event. I think it's a global liquefaction event. And it happened during the Dalton minimum, right at that point when we had Tambora, year without a summer. Because every time you talk about, going back where some of these buildings were just kind of sunk or there was mud that came around the buildings a lot, it's always in the 1810 era, early 1800s. Everybody pings it at the early 1800s. Well, what do we have then? The Dalton minimum. And we're starting to see oozes out of the crust of the earth. Mongolia has two events where the mountains literally split open and you got this black mud slowly oozing down the mountains. Well, where do you see again? Spain, Portugal, Croatia, Slovenia. The mountains move like wax, like melting wax, And these are the same kind of events that would not topple a building, but they would surround it and then bury floors of it. So I'm really starting to take a look at what they call the global liquefaction events here. And when we get further back in Tartaria, and this is the reason I want to bring up this point, is are those ancient, architecture feats that we see that can't be replicated today, are those really cathedrals, or are those the same type of energy towers that you talk about? Because when you look at a motherboard on something, if you bring it down with a microscope and you really look into it, take it 3D and then bring it to that street view almost, they look exactly the same as what we see in these cathedrals. And a lot of them were never had heating inside them. So they only installed heating in the late 1700s in a lot of these places. So for me, it's like, all right, so you made these giant cathedrals, but there's no heating inside. So when everybody goes in there to worship and stay in there for long periods of time in our freezing cold winters in the Northern Hemisphere, there was no heating inside there. That's a new thing in the last 200, 250 years. Are you kidding me? Like there's a huge disconnect in between design modifications, windows being buried halfway up in mud, buildings not being heated, and the remnants of an entire global civilization that ran off of wireless power, period. And that's where my new study is going, because we're coming back to the same cycle again with this global liquefactions beginning again. So that's why I brought up the point there.
I'm glad you did, because I've heard a lot of people, or I shouldn't say heard, I've read a lot of people's comments in the chat, and also in a lot of the videos that I've done that have said, Rex, get somebody on about the what did you pronounce?
It's called Tartaria.
Tartaria, yeah, the Tartaria civilization, and a lot of people talking about the mud floods, and I didn't know what that was
definitely
even
connected.
About. Yeah, so that's legit then. That's real.
Yeah, what I'm finding is surprising. Now, in a couple of my new videos that I'm putting down, I'm actually going way deep into the global liquefaction events. And I encourage anybody out there, and actually I talked to somebody tonight who does archaeological studies, and they directed me to, let me write down my notes here. Oh, Port Royal. Now, this was an old pirate fort, 1700s. They experienced a huge liquefaction event, 99 to 1803, somewhere in there, and the historians put it that like entire buildings disappeared. And then a lot of stuff sank down. And when you start to look at around, when you see this global liquefaction event, you'll see the same exact fingerprint. And once you see the fingerprint, you will see it everywhere. It is a global event.